The bottle of whiskey hit the weathered wooden table with a thud that would echo through Lily Norton's memory for the rest of her days. And her father's slurred words came next, sealing a transaction that would change everything she thought she knew about human decency and her own value in this unforgiving world. "She's yours now," her father said, his voice thick with drink and something darker that Lily could not bear to name. "Fair trade, I reckon." The saloon keeper, a heavy-set man named Mortimer with whiskey-soaked breath and wandering hands, grinned wide enough to show his missing teeth. It was April of 1878, and Lily stood frozen in the corner of the Dusty Rose Saloon in Circleville, Utah, a town that squatted in the desert like a collection of sun-bleached bones. She was 19 years old, and until this moment she had believed that her father, despite his many flaws and his increasing fondness for drink, possessed at least a shred of paternal feeling toward her. She had been wrong. "Come here, girl," Mortimer said, reaching for her with thick fingers. Lily's throat closed. She looked at her father, searching his bloodshot eyes for any sign of remorse, any indication that this was some cruel joke brought on by too much whiskey. But Thomas Norton would not meet her gaze. He simply grabbed the bottle, tucked it under his arm like a treasured possession, and walked out into the dusty street without looking back. The world tilted sideways for Lily. Her mother had died 3 years ago, consumption taking her slowly and painfully through a winter that seemed to last forever. Since then, Lily had kept house for her father, cooked his meals, mended his clothes, and endured his increasingly bitter moods as his debts mounted and his drinking worsened. She had known things were bad, but this betrayal cut deeper than any words could express. "I said come here," Mortimer repeated, his voice hardening. Before Lily could move, the saloon doors swung open with enough force to rattle the dusty windows. A tall figure stepped through, silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun that turned everything outside into white heat. As the doors swung shut and her eyes adjusted, Lily saw a cowboy unlike any she had seen in Circleville before. He was young, perhaps 24 or 25, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. Dust covered his clothes, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to hard work and harder country. "Mortimer," the cowboy said, his voice carrying a pleasant drawl that suggested Texas or perhaps Oklahoma. "Heard you've been watering down the whiskey you sell to the ranchers." Mortimer's face reddened. "That's a damn lie, Cole Xerxes, and you know it." So this was Cole Xerxes. Lily had heard the name spoken in town with a mixture of respect and wariness. He worked for the Patterson Ranch, one of the larger spreads outside Circleville, and had a reputation for being fair but uncompromising. He did not start fights, but he finished them. He paid his debts and expected others to do the same. Cole's eyes swept the room and landed on Lily, still pressed against the wall near the piano that no one had tuned in 5 years. His expression shifted, something flickering across his features that might have been recognition or understanding. "That girl looks like she would rather be anywhere else," Cole observed mildly. "Seems strange for someone working in a saloon." "She is not working here," Mortimer said quickly, too quickly. "She is just visiting." "Visiting," Cole repeated, and though his tone remained conversational, there was steel underneath. "Is that so?" Lily found her voice small and shaking though it was. "He traded for me. My father traded me for a bottle of whiskey." The silence that followed her words was absolute. Even the usual sounds of the saloon, the clink of glasses and shuffle of cards, ceased. Every eye turned toward Mortimer. Cole's jaw tightened. "Is that true?" "Now see here," Mortimer blustered. "That is between me and Tom Norton. The man owed me money, lots of it, and we came to an arrangement." "An arrangement," Cole said softly, and something about the way he said it made Mortimer take a step back. "You cannot trade a human being for whiskey or anything else. That is not an arrangement. That is something else entirely, and you know it." Mortimer's hand moved toward the counter where Lily knew he kept a shotgun. Cole was faster. In a motion so fluid it seemed almost lazy, he drew his pistol and held it loosely at his side. Not pointing it at anyone, not making an overt threat, but the message was clear. "I am going to make you a different arrangement," Cole said. "I am going to buy that bottle of whiskey from you for $5, which is about $4 more than it is worth. In exchange, you are going to forget this whole ugly business and consider Tom Norton's debt settled. The girl walks out of here with me, and we never speak of this again." $5 does not cover what Norton owes," Mortimer protested. "Then you should not have accepted a bottle of whiskey as payment," Cole pointed out. $5. Take it or leave it." Mortimer's eyes darted around the room, looking for support, but the other patrons suddenly found their drinks and card games fascinating. Everyone knew Cole Xerxes, and everyone knew he had the backing of Jim Patterson, who owned a third of the land around Circleville. More importantly, everyone in that saloon knew that what Mortimer had done crossed a line that even in this rough country could not be overlooked. "Fine," Mortimer finally spat. "Take the girl. She is probably more trouble than she is worth anyway." Cole counted out 5 silver dollars onto the bar with deliberate precision, each coin clinking against the wood. Then he holstered his pistol and turned to Lily, his expression gentling. "You have anywhere to go?" he asked her. Lily shook her head. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here, not in front of these people. Can you ride?" "Yes," she managed. "Then come on. We will figure out the rest as we go." Lily followed Cole out into the brilliant sunshine, leaving behind the stale air and staler dreams of the Dusty Rose Saloon. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes, was tied to the rail. Cole untied the reins and swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then offered Lily his hand. She hesitated for only a moment before taking it. His palm was calloused and warm, and he pulled her up behind him without apparent effort. She settled onto the horse's back, acutely aware of the impropriety of the situation but too numb to care much about propriety at this point. As they rode through Circleville's dusty Main Street, Lily kept her eyes straight ahead. She could feel the weight of curious stares, could imagine the whispers that would follow this spectacle. The Norton girl, traded for whiskey like a piece of furniture, rescued by Cole Xerxes like some character in a dime novel. The shame was almost overwhelming, but beneath the shame, there was something else. A tiny flicker of something that might have been hope, or might have been simple relief, that she was moving away from Mortimer and his grasping hands, away from a father who had valued her less than cheap alcohol. They rode in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. The town fell away behind them, replaced by scrubland dotted with sage and juniper. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and hazy in the afternoon heat. The rhythmic movement of the horse, the creak of leather and the jingle of the bit created a kind of music that was almost soothing. Finally, Cole spoke. "There is a boarding house on the edge of the Patterson ranch. Mrs. Henderson runs it for the hands who do not want to stay in the bunkhouse. She is a good woman, fair and kind. I am thinking she might have work for you, and it would come with room and board." "I do not have any money," Lily said quietly. "Did not figure you did. But Mrs. Henderson is usually short-handed. If you can cook or clean or help with the washing, I expect she would be glad to have you. The work is honest, and she does not tolerate any nonsense from the hands." "Why are you doing this?" The question burst out of Lily before she could stop it. You do not know me. I could be anything, anyone. Cole was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. My mama used to say that how you treat someone at their lowest tells you everything about who you are when no one is watching. What happened back there in that saloon was not right, not by any measure I know. Maybe I cannot fix everything wrong in this territory, but I could do something about that. So I did. His answer struck Lily as both simple and profound. In her experience, people usually wanted something in return for their help, but Cole's words carried a ring of sincerity that made her want to believe him. I will work hard, she promised. I will earn my keep. Never doubted it, Cole said. They rode on, and gradually Lily felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. The afternoon sun beat down, but there was a breeze that carried the scent of sage and something sweetly floral she could not identify. This country was harsh and unforgiving, but it had a beauty too, if you knew where to look for it. The Patterson Ranch came into view as they crested a low rise. It sprawled across a valley between red rock hills, with a main house that was larger than anything in Circleville proper, several barns, corrals filled with horses, and various outbuildings that spoke of a prosperous operation. To the east, set apart but still within sight of the main ranch, stood a neat two-story building with a wide porch and actual glass in the windows. That is the boarding house, Cole said, nodding toward it. Like I said, Mrs. Henderson runs a tight ship, but she is fair. She lost her husband about 10 years back, and her son rode off to seek his fortune in California. Never came back. Mr. Patterson gave her the boarding house to manage, and she has been there ever since. As they approached, a woman emerged onto the porch. She was perhaps 50, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, and a frame that suggested she had never shied away from hard work. Her face was weathered but not unkind, and her sharp blue eyes took in the scene with obvious curiosity. Cole dismounted and helped Lily down, his hands respectful and steady. Then he turned to face Mrs. Henderson, who had descended the porch steps and now stood with her arms crossed. Mrs. Henderson, Cole greeted her with a tip of his hat. I apologize for showing up without warning. Cole Xerxes, Mrs. Henderson said, her voice carrying the faint trace of a Scottish accent that years in Utah had not quite erased. I have known you since you were a dusty saddle tramp looking for work 3 years ago. You do not show up with a young lady behind you on your horse unless there is a story worth hearing. Let us have it, Cole explained, his words carefully chosen but honest. He did not embellish or dramatize, simply laid out what had happened in the saloon. Lily watched Mrs. Henderson's face as she listened, saw the way her expression hardened when Cole mentioned the whiskey, the way her eyes softened when they landed on Lily. When Cole finished, Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed deeply and beckoned to Lily. Come here, child, she said, and her voice was gentler than Lily expected. Let me look at you. Lily stepped forward, feeling like she was being assessed, measured, and judged all at once. Mrs. Henderson studied her face, then nodded as if coming to a decision. Can you cook? She asked bluntly. Yes, madam. I kept house for my father after my mother passed. Can you take direction without arguing? Yes, madam. Can you work from dawn to dusk without complaining? I can, madam. Mrs. Henderson's expression softened further. Good. Because I need someone who can do all those things and more. 2 of my girls ran off and got married last month, and I have been run ragged trying to keep up with feeding the hands and keeping this place from falling into chaos. You will work for your room and board for the first month. If you prove yourself, we will discuss wages after that. The room is small but clean, and you will share it with Clara, who helps with the laundry. She is a good girl, quiet. The rules are simple. No drinking, no gambling, no entertaining men in your room, and you attend Sunday services whether you feel like it or not. Break any of those rules and you are out. Do we have an understanding?" Relief flooded through Lily so suddenly she felt dizzy. "Yes, madam." "Thank you, madam." "Do not thank me yet. You have not seen how much work there is." But Mrs. Henderson's eyes held a hint of warmth. "Come on, then. I will show you to your room and you can get settled. Supper is at 6, and I expect you to help serve even if you are dead on your feet. We feed 30 hands most nights, so you will need to learn quickly." As Mrs. Henderson led Lily toward the boarding house, Lily glanced back at Cole. He had not moved, still standing beside his horse, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Thank you," she called to him, the words inadequate but heartfelt. Cole touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that was somehow both casual and respectful. "You take care of yourself, Miss Norton. If you need anything, you can find me in the 3rd bunkhouse or out on the range most days." Then he swung back onto his horse and rode off toward the main ranch buildings, leaving Lily to wonder if she would ever see him again, or if this brief intersection of their lives was all there would ever be. The room Mrs. Henderson showed her was indeed small, barely large enough for 2 narrow beds, a washstand, and a single dresser. But it was clean, as promised, with crisp white curtains on the window and a patchwork quilt on each bed. After the uncertainty of the last few hours, it looked like paradise. Clara turned out to be a plump, cheerful girl of about 17 with red hair and more freckles than Lily had ever seen on one person. She greeted Lily with enthusiasm, chattering on about the boarding house, the ranch hands, Mrs. Henderson's expectations, and a dozen other topics without seeming to need much response. It was oddly comforting after the silence of the ride. That first evening, Lily learned the truth of Mrs. Henderson's warning. Feeding 30 hungry ranch hands was a monumental task that involved carrying platters of food that seemed to weigh as much as a small child, refilling coffee cups endlessly, and moving fast enough that nothing got cold before it reached the table. By the time the last hand had finished eating and the dishes were cleared, washed, and put away, Lily's feet ached and her arms trembled with exhaustion. But she had done it. She had made it through her first day, and when she finally collapsed into bed, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt useful. She felt like she had worth. Over the following days, Lily fell into a rhythm. She woke before dawn to help Mrs. Henderson prepare breakfast, served the hands their meals, cleaned up afterward, helped with whatever other tasks needed doing, and then did it all again for the midday meal and supper. The work was relentless, but it was also oddly satisfying. Mrs. Henderson was exacting in her standards, but generous with praise when it was earned, and Clara's constant chatter filled what might otherwise have been lonely hours. Lily saw Cole occasionally, usually at mealtimes when he came in with the other hands. He always nodded to her politely, sometimes offered a quiet evening, Miss Norton, but otherwise kept his distance. Lily told herself she was grateful for that restraint, that the last thing she needed was complications. But she found herself watching for him anyway, noticed when his usual seat at the long table was empty, and felt a small, traitorous flutter in her chest when he smiled at something one of the other cowboys said. It was foolish, she told herself. Cole Xerxes had helped her out of basic human decency, nothing more. He had not shown any particular interest in her beyond ensuring she landed safely somewhere respectable. She needed to focus on proving herself to Mrs. Henderson, on building a new life that did not depend on her father or any other man. But the heart, Lily was learning, did not always listen to reason. 3 weeks after Lily arrived at the boarding house, a spring storm rolled in from the mountains. It was the kind of storm that turned the sky green and made the air feel thick enough to chew. Mrs. Henderson took one look at the horizon and started barking orders, sending Clara to help secure the shutters and Lily to bring in as much firewood as she could manage from the woodshed before the rain started. Lily was on her fourth trip, arms loaded with split logs, when the first drops began to fall. They were fat and cold, and within seconds they turned into a downpour that soaked her to the skin and turned the ground into slick mud. She made it to the porch and deposited her load, then turned to go back for more. "That is enough," Mrs. Henderson called from the doorway. "You will catch your death. Get inside and change into dry clothes." But Lily had seen how low the woodpile inside was, and she knew that if the storm lasted, they would need more to keep the stoves burning for cooking and heat. Without thinking too hard about it, she plunged back out into the rain. The woodshed was only about 30 yards from the boarding house, but the storm had intensified, and visibility had dropped to almost nothing. Lily grabbed another armload of wood, struggling to keep her footing in the mud. She was halfway back to the house when she slipped, going down hard on one knee. The wood scattered, and pain shot through her leg. She was trying to gather the fallen logs when a figure appeared beside her, materializing out of the gray curtain of rain. "What are you doing out here?" Cole shouted over the roar of the storm. "Getting wood," Lily shouted back, feeling foolish even as she said it. Cole shook his head in what might have been exasperation or disbelief, then bent to scoop up the scattered logs. "Get to the house," he ordered. "I will bring the wood." "I can do it," Lily protested. "I know you can," Cole said, his voice gentling even though he still had to shout to be heard. "But you do not have to. Now go before you freeze." This time Lily obeyed. She limped to the boarding house, her knee throbbing where she had hit the ground. Mrs. Henderson took one look at her and pointed toward the stairs. "Dry clothes. Now. And check that knee." Lily changed quickly, examining her knee to find it bruised but not seriously hurt. By the time she made it back downstairs, Cole had brought in enough wood to see them through a week of storms. He stood dripping on the rug by the door, his hat in his hands and his dark hair plastered to his head. "Thank you," Mrs. Henderson said to him. "That was kind of you." "No trouble," Cole replied. His eyes found Lily's. "You all right, Miss Norton?" "I am fine. Thank you for your help." "You might want to put something cold on that knee," he said, and she realized he must have seen her fall. "Bruises swell less if you tend them right away." "I will," Lily promised. Cole nodded, settled his wet hat back on his head, and headed back out into the storm. Through the window, Lily watched him jog toward the bunkhouses, his long stride eating up the distance despite the mud and rain. "That is a good man," Mrs. Henderson observed, coming to stand beside Lily at the window. "Not many of those around, if you ask me." Lily did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. But she thought about Cole's words, about how he had acknowledged that she could handle the wood herself, but had helped anyway. That kind of respect was new to her, and she was not quite sure what to do with it. The storm lasted 2 days, keeping everyone inside except when absolutely necessary. The boarding house felt crowded and close, with Clara chattering even more than usual, and Mrs. Henderson muttering about muddy boots and wet clothes draped everywhere. But on the 3rd day, the sun came out, and the world seemed to sparkle, everything washed clean and new. That afternoon, Mrs. Henderson called Lily into her small office off the kitchen. Lily went nervously, wondering if she had done something wrong, if the incident with the wood had somehow proved her inadequate. But Mrs. Henderson was smiling, a rare sight that transformed her stern face into something almost mischievous. "You have been here a month," she said without preamble. "You work hard, do not complain, and you are good with the hands. They like your cooking. which is saying something since most of them would eat shoe leather if you put enough gravy on it. I am prepared to offer you regular employment at $15 a month plus room and board. That is fair wages for this kind of work. What do you say? $15 a month. It was not a fortune, but it was hers, earned by her own effort. Lily felt emotion well up in her throat. Yes, she managed. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I will not let you down. I know you will not. Now get back to work. Those potatoes will not peel themselves. Lily threw herself into her work with renewed energy. For the first time since her mother died, she felt like she had a future, something that belonged to her and could not be taken away or traded for a bottle of whiskey. She started saving her wages in a small tin box under her bed, thinking vaguely of someday having enough to perhaps start her own boarding house or restaurant. Summer arrived, bringing heat that shimmered off the red rocks and turned the valley into an oven. The work got harder, the hours longer as the ranch prepared for the cattle drive that would take a significant portion of the herd to market in Salt Lake City. The boarding house was always full, and sometimes Mrs. Henderson had to turn hands away for lack of beds. Lily saw more of Cole during this period. He was often at meals, sometimes covered in dust from working with the cattle, sometimes with rope burns on his hands from breaking horses. He remained polite but distant, always respectful, never presuming. Lily told herself she appreciated that distance even as something in her wished he would cross it. It was Clara who finally brought things to a head. She and Lily were hanging laundry on the lines behind the boarding house, the white sheets snapping in the breeze when Clara said casually, "You know Cole Xerxes is sweet on you, right?" Lily nearly dropped the sheet she was holding. "What? No, he is not. He barely speaks to me." "Exactly," Clara said triumphantly. "He barely speaks to any of us, but with you he goes out of his way not to speak. That means something." "That means he is not interested," Lily countered, but her heart was beating faster. "That means he is interested, but thinks you are too good for him, or maybe that you would not welcome his attention after what happened with your father," Clara corrected. "I have seen him watching you when he thinks no one is looking. He is definitely interested." Lily wanted to dismiss Clara's observations as the romantic fancies of a 17-year-old girl, but she could not quite manage it. Because now that Clara had said it, Lily realized she had noticed those glances, those moments when she looked up to find Cole's eyes on her before he quickly looked away. "Even if that were true," Lily said carefully, "I do not know what I am supposed to do about it." Clara grinned. "You could try talking to him, like a normal person." "About what?" "About anything. The weather, the cattle, how pretty the mountains look at sunset. It does not matter, just give him an opening." Lily was still mulling over this advice that evening when she was serving supper and Cole came in late, apologizing to Mrs. Henderson for holding up the meal. There was a cut on his cheek that looked fresh, and his knuckles were scraped. "What happened to you?" Mrs. Henderson demanded. "Had a disagreement with a fence post," Cole said with a slight smile. "The fence post won." "Get that cleaned up before it festers," Mrs. Henderson ordered. "Lily, take him to the kitchen and get some carbolic on those scrapes. The rest of you start eating before it gets cold." Suddenly, Lily found herself alone in the kitchen with Cole, who looked distinctly uncomfortable as she pumped water into a basin and gathered clean rags. This was her opening, she realized, the chance Clara had been talking about. "Sit down," she told Cole, gesturing to one of the kitchen chairs. He obeyed, and Lily dampened a rag, then gently cleaned the cut on his cheek. He held very still, his gray eyes fixed on a point somewhere over her shoulder. This close, she could see the darker flecks in his irises, could smell the clean scent of soap mixed with leather and horses. "This might sting," she warned, reaching for the bottle of carbolic. "I can handle it," Cole said, and his voice had gone rough. Lily dabbed the antiseptic on the cut as gently as she could. Cole did not flinch, but she saw his jaw tighten. When she moved to his hand to tend the scraped knuckles, he started to pull away. "It is fine," he said. "You do not need to fuss." "Let me help," Lily said softly. "Please." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, some understanding or acknowledgement that this was about more than carbolic and scraped knuckles. Slowly, Cole extended his hand, palm up, and Lily cradled it in hers while she cleaned the abrasions. His hands were strong and calloused, marked by hard work and the occasional injury. But they were also gentle, she remembered, gentle when he had helped her onto his horse, gentle when he had pulled her up when she fell in the rain. "Thank you," Cole said when she finished, his voice still carrying that rough edge, "for this and for everything else." "I should be thanking you," Lily said. "You saved me that day in the saloon. You gave me a chance at a real life." "You saved yourself," Cole corrected. "You are the one doing the work, proving yourself every day. I just pointed you in the right direction." "You did more than that," Lily insisted. She took a breath, gathering her courage. "You made me feel like I had worth, like I was more than what my father thought I was." Cole's expression shifted, something fierce and tender all at once crossing his features. "You were always more than that, Lily. Anyone with eyes could see it." It was the first time he had used her first name, and hearing it in his voice sent warmth spreading through her chest. She realized she was still holding his hand and he was not pulling away. "Cole," she began, not knowing what she wanted to say but needing to say something. The kitchen door swung open and one of the hands poked his head in. "Mrs. Henderson wants to know if you died in here or if we can get some more biscuits." The moment shattered. Lily stepped back, dropping Cole's hand, and moved quickly to grab the basket of biscuits from the warming oven. Cole stood, thanked her again quietly, and headed back to the dining room. But something had changed. That barrier of careful distance had developed a crack, and through that crack, possibility was beginning to seep. Over the next few weeks, Lily and Cole found more opportunities to talk. Small conversations at first, brief exchanges about the weather or the ranch, or how the cattle were looking. Then longer discussions when they happened to both be on the porch in the evening, or when Cole would linger after meals to help carry the heavy kettles of water that Lily needed for washing dishes. Lily learned that Cole had grown up in Texas, the youngest of 5 brothers, and had headed west after his parents died within 6 months of each other. He had worked a dozen different ranches before landing at Patterson's place, and he had saved almost every penny he earned with some vague dream of someday having his own spread. "Nothing big," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch steps watching the sun paint the mountains gold and crimson. "Just enough land for a decent herd and maybe a small house. Somewhere I could put down roots, you know. I am tired of drifting." "That sounds nice," Lily said, and meant it. She could picture it. A ranch tucked into a valley, cattle grazing peacefully, a house with a real wood floor and windows that looked out on those painted mountains. "What about you?" Cole asked. "What do you want, Lily? For your future, I mean." It was a question no one had ever asked her before. Her father had certainly never cared what she wanted, and even Mrs. Henderson's kindness had practical limits. But Cole asked like her answer mattered, like her dreams had value. "I want to feel safe," Lily said slowly, working it out as she spoke. "I want to know that I have a place in the world that is mine, that cannot be taken away. And I want to matter to someone, not as a housekeeper or a cook or someone to use, but as myself." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Cole said quietly. His hand, resting on the step between them, shifted slightly, and his little finger brushed against hers. It was the barest contact, but it sent electricity racing up Lily's arm. She turned her head to look at him and found him already looking at her. In the fading light, his eyes were dark and serious. "You matter to me," he said, the words simple but weighted with meaning. "I want you to know that you matter." Lily's breath caught. "Cole." "I know this might not be welcome," he continued, the words coming faster now, like he was afraid if he stopped he would not start again. "I know you have been through a lot, and maybe the last thing you want is some cowboy bothering you, but I cannot stop thinking about you, Lily. Have not been able to since the day I saw you in that saloon, looking like you were ready to fight the whole world, even though you were terrified. You are the bravest person I have ever met, and the kindest, and the most beautiful, and I would count myself the luckiest man in the territory if you would let me court you proper. If you would give me a chance to show you that not all men are like your father, that some of us know how to cherish what is precious." The speech left him slightly breathless, and Lily could see the vulnerability in his face, the fear that she would reject him. But how could she? This man who had saved her, who had respected her, who saw her not as a burden or a commodity but as someone worth cherishing. "Yes," she said, and watched his eyes widen with hope. "Yes, I would like that very much." The smile that broke across Cole's face was like sunrise, bright and warm and full of promise. He took her hand properly this time, his fingers lacing through hers, and they sat together on the porch steps as the stars began to emerge, talking about everything and nothing until Mrs. Henderson called Lily in to help with the evening cleanup. Courting in a boarding house full of nosy ranch hands and under the watchful eye of Mrs. Henderson required both creativity and strict adherence to propriety. But Cole proved surprisingly adept at both. He brought Lily wildflowers that he picked on his rides, left small gifts like a pretty stone or an interesting feather where she would find them. On Sundays after church, Mrs. Henderson allowed them to take walks together, though always with Clara tagging along as a chaperone. Those walks became the highlight of Lily's week. They would stroll through the sagebrush, Cole pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about the ranch and the territory. Lily would talk about her mother, about the happy memories from before the sickness, about her dreams for the future that were becoming clearer and more defined with each passing day. Cole was a good listener, thoughtful and engaged. He asked questions that showed he really heard what she was saying, and he shared his own thoughts with an honesty that Lily treasured. There was no pretense with Cole, no games or manipulation. What you saw was what you got. A hard-working cowboy with a good heart and dreams that were starting to align with hers. 3 months into their courtship, Cole asked Lily to marry him. They were on one of their Sunday walks, had wandered farther than usual to a spot where a small creek cut through the red rocks, creating a green oasis of cottonwood trees and cool water. Clara had begged off the walk claiming a headache, though Lily suspected Mrs. Henderson had orchestrated the whole thing. Cole had been quieter than usual, almost nervous, his hand gripping hers a bit tighter than normal. When they reached the creek, he stopped and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Lily," he began, then stopped and took a breath. "I am not good with fancy words, and I do not have much to offer you except hard work and a heart that is completely yours. But I love you. I think I have loved you since the moment I saw you in that saloon, and I know I will love you until my last breath. I want to build that ranch I told you about, and I want to build it with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to have children with you and grow old with you and face whatever this hard country throws at us together. So I am asking, will you marry me? Will you be my wife?" Tears were streaming down Lily's face, but they were good tears, happy tears. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you." Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her tight like she was something precious he was afraid to break. Lily buried her face in his chest, feeling his heart pounding against her cheek, feeling the strength of his arms around her, and knowing she was safe, truly safe, for the first time since her mother died. When they finally pulled apart, Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "It was my mother's," he said. "It is not fancy, but it is all I have right now. Someday I will get you something better." "It is perfect," Lily said, and meant it. Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit as if it had been made for her. They were married a month later in the small church in Circleville. Mrs. Henderson insisted on making Lily a dress, a beautiful creation of ivory cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Clara wove wildflowers into Lily's hair and cried happy tears through the entire ceremony. Jim Patterson himself gave Lily away, declaring that any woman who could manage Mrs. Henderson's kitchen deserved the respect of standing in for her absent family. Cole wore his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed, his gray eyes bright with emotion as he watched Lily walk down the aisle. When the preacher asked if he took this woman to be his wife, his "I do" rang out clear and strong, a vow and a promise that Lily knew he would keep. The reception was held at the boarding house, with food enough to feed half the territory and dancing that lasted well into the evening. The ranch hands toasted the newlyweds, Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with her apron, and Lily felt surrounded by something she had thought she lost: family. As the evening wound down and Cole led her away to the small cabin that Mr. Patterson had given them as a wedding present, Lily looked back at the boarding house, at the people gathered on the porch waving and calling good wishes. She thought about the girl who had been traded for whiskey, who had believed her worth could be measured in spirits and coins. She had been so wrong. Her worth could not be measured, could not be quantified or traded or sold. It was inherent, permanent, as much a part of her as her heartbeat. And Cole had seen it when she could not see it herself, had reflected it back to her until she could believe it too. The cabin was small but well built, with a stone fireplace and real glass windows. Cole had furnished it simply with a bed he had built himself, a table and chairs, and a rocking chair that he said was for someday when they had children. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, filled with whispered words and gentle touches. Cole was patient and careful, mindful of Lily's nervousness, making sure she felt cherished and safe. When they finally came together, it felt like a completion, two halves finding their whole. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, listening to the night sounds through the open window. "I love you," Lily whispered, the words coming easier each time she said them. "I love you too," Cole replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily Xerxes." Lily Xerxes. Her new name, her new life. She smiled in the darkness and snuggled closer to her husband, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her palm. The first year of their marriage was hard work but filled with joy. Lily continued helping at the boarding house part-time, enjoying the work and the company, while also making the cabin into a real home. She sewed curtains for the windows, planted a garden that produced more vegetables than two people could eat, and learned to make Cole's favorite meals. Cole worked long hours on the ranch, saving every penny he could toward the dream of his own spread, but he always came home to Lily with a smile and a kiss and stories about his day. They fell into rhythms and routines that felt comfortable and right. Morning coffee shared in companionable silence before the day began. Evening meals where they would talk about everything and nothing. Sundays spent exploring the territory or simply sitting together on their small porch, watching the world go by. In the spring of their second year of marriage, Lily discovered she was pregnant. The realization filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had seen women die in childbirth, had watched her own mother waste away from illness. But when she told Cole, his reaction was pure delight. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing, then immediately set her down and apologized for being too rough. "Are you happy?" he asked, his hands gentle on her still flat stomach. "I am terrified," Lily admitted. "But yes, I am happy, so happy." Cole became even more protective as her pregnancy progressed. He worried about her overworking, insisted she rest more, and drove Mrs. Henderson to distraction by showing up at the boarding house to check on Lily multiple times a day. But Lily did not mind. After a lifetime of being overlooked and undervalued, Cole's attention felt like proof of love. The baby came in early winter, after a labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Mrs. Henderson served as midwife, her capable hands and calm demeanor getting Lily through the worst of it. And when the baby finally emerged, red-faced and squalling, Mrs. Henderson placed him in Lily's arms with a smile. "A boy," she announced. "A healthy, strong boy." Cole, who had been pacing outside the cabin, burst through the door at the sound of the baby's cries. He froze when he saw Lily holding their son, his face cycling through about a dozen emotions before landing on something that looked like awe. "A boy," Lily said, smiling through her exhaustion. "We have a son, Cole." He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt beside the bed, his eyes drinking in the sight of mother and child. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you, Lily. Thank you for this." They named him Matthew, after Cole's father, with the middle name of Thomas, which was a gesture of forgiveness toward Lily's father that she needed to make for herself more than for him. Matthew Xerxes came into the world with a full head of dark hair and his father's gray eyes, and from the moment Lily first held him, she understood a kind of love she had never experienced before. Being a mother transformed Lily in ways she had not anticipated. The fierce protectiveness she felt for Matthew, the overwhelming need to keep him safe and happy and loved, gave her new understanding of how wrong her own father had been. How could anyone who had held their child, who had felt this connection, ever choose a bottle over them? She would never understand it, and she decided that was all right. Some things were not meant to be understood. Matthew grew into a happy, energetic toddler who followed his father around the ranch whenever Cole was home, chattering in his own language and trying to help with chores. Cole was a wonderful father, patient and playful, teaching Matthew about horses and cattle and the land with the same care he had shown Lily. When Matthew was 3, Mr. Patterson called Cole into his office at the main ranch house. Lily was at the boarding house helping Mrs. Henderson with preparations for a big dinner. Matthew playing under the table with some wooden blocks Clara had carved for him when Cole came to find her. His face was flushed, his eyes bright with excitement. "Mr. Patterson wants to sell me a section of land on the north edge of his property," he said without preamble. "He is giving me favorable terms, says I have been a good hand, and he would rather have me as a neighbor than have the land sit empty. Lily, we can do it. We can start our ranch. It will be tight for a few years, and we will have to work harder than ever, but we can actually do this." Lily's heart soared. She knew how much this meant to Cole, how long he had been working toward this dream. "Then we do it," she said firmly. "We make it work." They moved onto their land that spring, living in a tent while Cole and some of the other hands built a small house. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs, built on land that belonged to them. Lily worked alongside Cole, helping however she could while also caring for Matthew and maintaining some semblance of domestic order. The first few years were lean. They started with a small herd of cattle purchased with their savings and a loan from Mr. Patterson. Cole worked their ranch and still put in time at Patterson's spread to earn money for supplies and to pay down their debt. Lily took in mending and sometimes baked goods to sell in town. They pinched every penny and went without luxuries, but they were building something together, and that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, arrived during their third year on the ranch. She had Lily's blonde hair and Cole's stubborn chin, and she ruled the household from the moment she could crawl. Matthew adored his little sister, and watching them play together filled Lily with contentment that ran bone deep. Slowly, year by year, the ranch grew. The herd increased. They added a barn and a chicken coop. Cole bought more land when it became available. They were not rich, would likely never be rich, but they were comfortable, secure, and happy. Lily sometimes thought about her father during those years. She heard through town gossip that he had died a few years after she married Cole, his liver finally giving out from all the drinking. She felt sad about it, sad for the man he might have been, sad for the relationship they never had. But she had long since forgiven him, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because carrying anger was too heavy a burden. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Lily with a new ring. It was delicate and beautiful, with a small diamond that caught the light. "I told you I would get you something better," he said as he slipped it onto her finger next to his mother's simple gold band. "You did not have to do this," Lily protested, even as she admired how it sparkled. "I wanted to," Cole said. "I wanted you to have something that shows the world how much you mean to me." "The world already knows," Lily said, touching his face tenderly. "You show me every single day, Cole, with your words and your actions and the life we have built together. I have never doubted my worth since the day you walked into that saloon." "Good," Cole said fiercely. "Because you are worth more than all the gold in California, more than all the cattle in Texas, more than anything I could ever name or measure. You are worth everything, Lily. Everything." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Lily kissed him back with all the love in her heart. Their family grew to include 2 more children, another boy named Jacob and a girl named Emma. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the respected spreads in the area. Matthew grew up to be a fine cattleman who eventually took over much of the day-to-day operations, allowing Cole and Lily to slow down a bit as they aged. Sarah married a school teacher and moved to Salt Lake City, but visited often with her growing family. Jacob became a veterinarian, the first in the family to attend college, and Emma shocked everyone by becoming a writer whose stories about ranch life earned her modest fame. Through it all, through the hard years and the good ones, the losses and the triumphs, Cole and Lily stood together. Their love deepened and matured, becoming something stronger than passion, something built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every single day. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house had been expanded over the years and now sprawled comfortably, with enough room for everyone. There was food and music and laughter, and as Lily watched her family, she felt almost overwhelmed by gratitude. Cole found her standing on the porch, looking out at the mountains that still painted themselves gold and crimson at sunset. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "I am thinking about how far we have come," Lily said. "About that girl in the saloon who thought her life was over, who believed she had no value. And now look at all of this." She gestured to encompass the ranch, the house full of family, the life they had built. "You always had value," Cole said quietly. "I just helped you see it." "You gave me more than that," Lily corrected. "You gave me love, you gave me safety, you gave me a reason to believe in myself and in the future. You gave me worth that could never be measured." Cole pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her silver hair. "You gave me all of that too, you know." We gave it to each other. And that, Lily thought, was the truest thing of all. They had saved each other, built each other up, made each other better. Together they had taken pain and injustice and transformed it into something beautiful and lasting. As the sun set and the stars began to emerge, Lily and Cole stood together on their porch, surrounded by the evidence of their love and labor. And Lily knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The seasons continued their endless cycle, and the years passed with the gentle inevitability of a river flowing to the sea. Cole's dark hair went silver, and his step slowed, but his eyes still lit up when Lily entered a room. Lily's hands grew gnarled with age, but they were still gentle when they touched her husband's face, still capable when there was work to be done. They celebrated their 50th anniversary surrounded by more family than either of them had dreamed possible. 17 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren filled the house with noise and life. Matthew's oldest son was already helping run the ranch, ensuring the Xerxes legacy would continue. During the celebration, Matthew stood to make a toast. He was a man in his late 40s now, with children of his own, but when he looked at his parents, Lily could still see traces of the little boy who had followed his father around the ranch. "To my parents," Matthew said, raising his glass, "who taught all of us that family is not just about blood, but about choice and commitment and showing up every day. Who proved that the worst beginnings can lead to the best endings. Who loved each other and us with a constancy that gave us all a foundation to build our lives on. May we all be so fortunate as to find what they found in each other." "Here, here," echoed around the room, and Lily wiped at tears that seemed to come more easily these days. That night, after everyone had finally gone to bed or headed home, Cole and Lily sat together on their porch in the rocking chairs they had bought years ago. The night was clear and cool, the stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. "You ever think about that day?" Cole asked. "In the saloon, I mean." "Sometimes," Lily admitted, "but not with pain anymore. It led me to you, and everything good in my life came from that. How can I regret something that brought me here?" "I think about it," Cole said. "I think about how close I came to not being there, to just riding past town that day, how different everything would be." "But you did not ride past," Lily pointed out. "You stopped. You saw someone who needed help and you did not look away. That is who you are, Cole. That is who you have always been." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands like they had on that porch step so many years ago. Finally, Cole spoke again. "I would do it all again, you know. Every hard year, every struggle, every moment of doubt. I would do it all exactly the same because it led me to this. To you, to our family, to this life we built together." "So would I," Lily said softly. "Every single moment." They stayed on the porch until the night grew cold enough to drive them inside, to the bedroom they had shared for 5 decades. To the bed where they had loved and comforted each other through joy and sorrow alike. Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep on a spring morning when he was 72 years old. He simply did not wake up, and the doctor said his heart had given out, worn down by a lifetime of hard work and hard country. Lily held his hand and said her goodbyes, told him she would be along soon enough, and thanked him one more time for seeing her worth when she could not see it herself. She lived for 3 more years without him, and though she missed Cole with an ache that never quite subsided, she was not lonely. Her family surrounded her, loving her and caring for her as she had cared for them. She spent her days in the rocking chair on the porch, watching her great-grandchildren play, telling them stories about their grandfather and the early days of the ranch. On a summer evening not unlike the one when Cole had proposed, Lily closed her eyes in that rocking chair and simply did not open them again. Matthew found her there, a small smile on her face, her hands folded peacefully in her lap. They buried her next to Cole on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree that provided shade in the summer and shelter from the wind in winter. The headstone was simple: Lily Xerxes, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. But those words, simple as they were, represented a life well lived and love well given. Years later, Matthew's grandchildren would ask about the story of how their great-great-grandparents met. Matthew would tell them the truth, not shying away from the painful parts, because Lily had always said that the painful parts made the beautiful parts more meaningful. He would tell them about a young woman traded for whiskey, about how she could have let that define her, but instead let it refine her. He would tell them about a cowboy who saw value where others saw only an opportunity for exploitation, who offered help without expecting anything in return. He would tell them about love that grew from respect and kindness, about partnership that weathered every storm, about building something lasting from the rubble of injustice and pain. And he would tell them that the lesson was not that someone would come save them, but that they had the power to save themselves with the help of good people who saw their worth. That love was not about possession or transaction, but about mutual elevation and respect. That the worst moments of our lives do not have to define our futures if we refuse to let them. The ranch continued on, generation after generation, each one adding their own chapter to the story, while honoring the foundation that Cole and Lily had built. The values they had lived by, the love they had shared, the family they had created, all of it endured, testament to two people who had refused to let circumstances dictate their worth or their future. In the small cemetery on the hill, the cottonwood tree grew tall and strong, its roots running deep into the red Utah soil, its branches reaching toward the endless sky. And if you sat there quietly on a summer evening, listening to the wind whisper through the leaves, you might almost hear the echo of laughter, of whispered promises, of a love story that began in the darkest of moments and bloomed into something that could never be measured, but only marveled at, and celebrated and held up as proof that even in the hardest country and the hardest times, love and worth and dignity could flourish if tended by willing hands and faithful hearts. The story of Cole and Lily Xerxes became part of the family lore, told and retold, each generation adding their own understanding while keeping the essential truth intact. That she had been traded for whiskey but found worth that could never be measured, and that the cowboy who saw that worth gave her not salvation but partnership, not rescue but respect, not ownership but love. And together, they had built something beautiful that lasted far beyond their own years, a legacy of love that would endure as long as the mountains stood and the stars wheeled overhead in the vast Utah sky.